Welcome to the $1 Million Multi-Op Podcast. Here, you're going to find education, entertainment, and a little inspiration on how to get to the next level. Are you a DJ company owner that's looking for the secret sauce? Congrats, you found it.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the $1 Million Multi-Op Podcast. I'm your host, David Osborne, with BlueprintLearn.com. On the podcast, one of the, I say OGs in my world, because when I was coming up as a DJ, I was watching this guy's videos all day long on YouTube, the one and only Jeremy Brech.
Hi, thanks for having me, David.
Jeremy's got the nice guitar wall in the background. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that sick collection. Boom. Now, how many of those do you play?
0. I play 0. I have 13 autographed guitars from some of my favorite bands and artists, and I am left-handed, so it's always been like that, I can't learn how to play right-handed. So I actually bought a left-handed guitar, which you can't see, it's off-frame. And one of my DJs has been trying to teach me guitar, but lack of time kind of limits that opportunity, so we haven't done that. So I will learn, though. That's a goal. I got to set goals.
I'm going to hold you accountable for that.
All right.
We'll do a duet. I just started piano lessons 2 weeks ago. So
nice.
I'm coming up on I found that's for me, that's what I need. I need actual lessons that I pay for. Yeah. If I don't, there's a 0%. I've been wanting to learn for 20 years. So the year I pay for it. So as I mentioned before, as I mentioned in the opening, Jer is a Renaissance man per se. I think that he's great at so many different things. And when I was coming up and watching the Shop Time videos on YouTube, I think that's how I learned Show Express, honestly. First, when I was like, okay, how do you use this program? It was your videos that helped me through. But you own Jer Events in Sioux Falls. Take us through kind of like the pie chart of what you do in Sioux Falls with your company.
Yeah, so just a little history and background. I actually started my company when I was 15, and it was just a single op type thing. My best friend, he and I would go travel and do all the school events in the area, and he would grab the CDs for me. So that kind of dates me. He would grab the CDs. I would DJ the music, and as I kept progressing and got through high school, we started getting a lot more calls where it's like, hey, we want you guys to do our event. And so started out as a DJ. That's how we kind of broke off into a multi-op, or we built into a multi-op, just the supply and demand. He started taking out the second system, and then we kept getting more requests and then kept building our business. And like you and I had talked offline, the whole process of building your business doesn't just happen overnight. It really does take a long time to progress. So with that being said, we've progressed from just doing DJing, from weddings to school events. We kind of dabbled in we can play background music and walk-up music for corporate events. And then it's like, well, we can start bringing projectors because we're using them for slideshows and we're doing this. And so now we've grown into a very large organization, a large group with about 12. I think we have about 12 DJs on staff right now. We have roughly 20 plus people on staff that allows us to DJ, but also do hybrid events. When that became popular, we were ready for that, doing a lot of corporate events. And we just, we grew into the corporate market. We video wall, lighting design, stage designs, AV all the way across the board. So it grew into this little 15-year-old hobby, or I should say a 15-year-old person's hobby, and grew into something that I'm extremely proud. I'm very proud of.
And I'm proud of you because I think there's a lot that you can see that someone does online, and you can see pictures, and we all put our best foot forward when it comes to the content that we post on social and the stories that we tell and the narrative that we control. But I've seen your work live, and it is detail-oriented isn't even the right phrase, because that's too ubiquitous a term. Like it's pretty, it's functional, it's creative. It's just like on point. So kudos to you on that. And, you touched on this, you started supply and demand bringing someone on. I think a lot of multi-op owners, this is a podcast for multi-op owners. So a lot of us started that way or are starting that way. We are experiencing too much too much demand. So we're having to increase the supply. Yeah. And so talk to me about like Sioux Falls, when you're not from the Midwest, when you don't know Sioux Falls at all, everyone, is like, oh, it's a Midwestern town. For us out on the East Coast, it feels like it's really far west. For you, it might feel like it's right in the middle, but it's really not that big of a town, right?
Yeah, the nice thing about Sioux Falls, and this is a benefit for us as a business owner in what we do within our market, within our industry. Sioux Falls is a very progressive town, and I mean that in a business standpoint, not so much like woke and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we're not that type of progression. Our progression is really businesses coming in, being successful because the way I guess you could say our government is set up here in South Dakota. There's no tax on certain things that allow businesses to really thrive on. There's no income tax. That's a huge thing. But again, we have a really small town, but very aggressive businesses and very successful businesses, whether it be through medical, agriculture is a very big thing here. We have a lot of industrial at a different type of scale than I would say, like when you think of Pittsburgh, you think of steel manufacturing. We have a lot of steel manufacturing and windmill manufacturing and things like that in this area. And when those businesses thrive, it allows our business to thrive. And I would say that's really what makes us successful is the fact that Sioux Falls and the surrounding area is successful. So that's kind of been a blessing for us.
So you're kind of saying it's really like an incubator for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, when one person grows or one business grows, everything around it grows. The other nice thing too, when I talked about getting into some of that corporate stuff, we do a lot of galas and we do a lot of fundraiser events. And we see a lot of businesses that are very philanthropical. They aren't afraid to give back to the community and give back to the organizations that help Sioux Falls grow. And again, the safer that Sioux Falls is, the better establishments that come into this area. When we see that philanthropy, then it really allows the entire city. It allows all the businesses in the area to grow as well. So Sioux Falls is, I think we just hit over 200,000 people. And I mean, for South Dakota, that's pretty big. That is the biggest city in the state of South Dakota. Now, we're definitely not big compared to, a lot of the bigger cities. But again, we're fortunate. There's a lot of great businesses that, in our industry that also do really well, and we thrive together. So it's a very successful market and a very successful industry in the Sioux Falls area.
I think I'm most interested because I live in Athens, Georgia. Athens is a bubble because, and we were talking a little bit about this offline, but it's a bubble because, we get a lot of notoriety because of the music scene here, or at least the music scene in the 80s and 90s. It's a little bit different now, but because of the football team, winning national championships, we get a lot of press. Yeah. But the city's not very big. And especially when the students aren't here, it's tiny. There's very little industry in our town. And there's not a lot of corporate events. There's not a lot of stuff happening. Most of our wedding clients that are higher end are destination clients. They're coming in because they went to school here. So I'm fascinated that you say, hey, our town has 200,000 people in it, and you're running a killer company in a very small market. Talk to us about the amount of work you're doing in Sioux Falls proper, like inside. I don't know if you have a perimeter or whatever, but like inside the city limits versus how far are you driving to, where's your market basically?
Yeah, for sure. So Sioux Falls, so South Dakota is very, very spread out. And I know you were out here, a couple months ago, and it's like, oh, we're going to go to this town. We got to drive 45 minutes to get to that town. It's not like the suburb. And Sioux Falls is very similar to that as well. So Sioux Falls being the biggest, and then you have Vermilion, which is the state or the city where USD, University of South Dakota is. That's about 50 minutes away. And then you have Brookings, which is about where SDSU, or South Dakota State University, known for their football team and a very successful university up there. They are an hour away. You have Mitchell, which is an hour away. There's nothing that's like, oh, we're just going to go 10 minutes and we're going to, hit that market. It's nothing like that for us. So really a lot of our business is very, very compressed inside of Sioux Falls. we definitely do business, outside, but we do have to drive that hour or however long to get to there. Um, when you think about it, though, a lot of the big cities, when they're like, well, we got to go set up this event. We live in LA or our business is in LA and we got to go set this event in LA. It's still an hour plus for them to get where they need to go. We're open road. I mean, we got windows down, we got our hair blowing in the wind. So it's a very spread out community. And there's very successful businesses in all of those facets or all of those surrounding communities. But again, it's not just a hop, skip, and jump away. I mean, it's a drive. And so we accomplish, hitting those markets as well. And we do travel. We actually do for Electro Voice. We actually do their NAM and their Infocom booths. So we go to Las Vegas for them. We go to Orlando. We go to Anaheim. We actually do travel, outside of the state quite a bit to do some of the bigger conferences for big businesses, and also like Chicago and those type of places. But it really is, man. It's a different type of event when you're starting to work with big city. You're working with the Encores and the Freemans and those type of things. It's definitely a change of pace, and man, our work ethic in the Midwest is so different than going into some of these big cities where they're just grabbing people to put on the set just so they can bill you for a body. So I tell you what, some of those big cities are tough for us, but we get through it. We enjoy it, and the outcome's always great.
You hit on something that a lot of people that we know have echoed the same sentiment. I think when you come from the private event space, when you come from DJing weddings and working with people in their, or philanthropic events where they're nonprofits, and there's a lot of heart in an event, and that's what your bread and butter is. When you go and you work with those union-based or those city-based, as you just said, like Bill for a Body type of companies, there's such a noticeable difference. And I think a lot of people get a lot of corporate work from the DJ space from that mindset.
Yeah, and really, that is a great opportunity to kind of get your foot in the door. We do a lot of holiday parties. Holiday parties are very successful for us. And sometimes, for instance, we have an event today for US Bank. We did a nonprofit event. It was for the furniture mission in our town. And US Bank was a sponsor of that. And we actually worked with them and, kind of the video and stuff like that. And, they reached out to us like 2 weeks ago. They're like, hey, we want some walk-up music. Can we get a DJ for our conference? I'm like, awesome. Yeah, no problem. And I'm like, well, how are you running your slideshow? Like, what screens are you using? Well, the venue has projectors and they have some pop-up screens. And I'm like, oh man, we could really do some really nice screens, some really bright projectors, which is going to allow you to leave the windows open. And then you can have confidence monitors. They're like, well, what's that? I'm like, well, you can actually see your slideshow, the presenters. We have these pro cues. It's like a $900 clicker, which is, you're never going to have problems with it. So it went from this, again, kind of circling back, it went from this helping out a nonprofit. Then they saw their need of having or needing a DJ. And then we said, you could do a DJ, but you could also take this to the next level and really create a great production for all these branch managers coming to your facility or coming to your meeting. And so we went from basically like a, $600 DJ of playing walk-up music when people are coming in between their presentations to over a $4,000 production, just helping out the nonprofit, creating a relationship, having them reach out to us because they know what we can provide, and then giving them more beyond their expectations. So it's fun watching some of those things progress and grow from something that was so simple to what we got to do today.
That's the level up. Boom. Right. Because you're hitting on it. Opportunity is everywhere.
Yeah.
And you found it, you capitalized on it. And a little note to the listeners, I am in the driver's seat of the sound effects today. So I'm just letting you know, things might get a little wild. Normally Ian's in control. Today it's me. I might just start a flurry of these things. Who knows? It's too much fun.
You got sound effects everywhere.
everywhere. No, but I think that's super cool what you guys are doing. Talk to me, I wasn't planning on asking this question, but this is something that we deal with on the regular because I'd say we're like 2 hours from everything. So there's Athens proper, and then Augusta is about 2 hours, Macon's about 2 hours, Atlanta with traffic is about 2 hours. Like everything's just 2 hours. We get into some interesting situations because we're never really local anywhere. We're local in Athens, but when we compete against Augusta companies or Macon companies, it's always these travel and accommodations things that come into the picture. And I'm curious, like when you're working, I'm not talking when you're traveling to what Vegas or those things. I'm talking about when you're going just that typical hour, 2 hours away. Do you guys bake in travel rates for those things? Or are you charging client-facing travel rates? Or are you saying your market's just expanded, so your rates just cover that stuff?
Yeah, the advantage of being in Sioux Falls is a lot of these surrounding towns that are an hour, 2 hours away. They understand that if they want a good product, they're going to have to go to the big city of Sioux Falls. They're going to have to go to the big city to get the production, to get the DJs, to get the product that they want. It's like when you go shopping, you go to a small town, you can find what you're looking for. But if you go to a big city, you're going to find more opportunity, more style of clothes, more stores to pick from. And that's what really allows us to be successful in those small towns, because they know they have to come to Sioux Falls to find some of that talent. And the thing that we do is they're very well aware. We put it right out there, like, A, you're going to have mileage. B, if it's over this distance, you're going to have to pay for an overnight stay for our DJ or for whatever, the team that's going there, especially if it's a late evening. And, they really don't have a problem with that. They understand that they're going to have to spend the extra money to make sure, again, that they get what they want from Sioux Falls to come to where they are, that 2 hours away. So again, it's just part of the investment that they're making. They're not just making investment in equipment, they're making investment in the talent. And obviously it's important for us to make sure that our talent is not driving at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, that we can take care of them and the client takes care of us to do the same. So that's an important thing for us.
I like that. It's like setting the expectation that this is part of it. It's non-negotiable. It's part of it.
Yeah.
That's to get the thing that you want, you have to pay what it costs.
Yeah. And, one more thing with that, David, I guarantee we've lost business because we've said, you are going to have to pay for a hotel room for the event or for the DJ that night. I'm sure we've lost business on that. But truthfully, at that point, if my DJ doesn't have to travel 2 hours to go do an event and we can book it more local here, well, I'm good with that.
Yeah, I'm good with that too. Sometimes I find myself with events that are 3 hours away and I question myself why I took it. But that's neither here nor there. I want to pivot a little bit because we've had some guests on the podcast. Well, there's a huge range of guests that we've had on the podcast, from people like Eric Massengale, who are really talented at building systems and systematizing things that, everything is the same and it's very efficient, I would say. We've had people, I would talk to Dylan Wiseman and Michael Langsner, who are doing higher end mitzvahs where everything is customizable.
David, I did take advantage of, sorry, I know we're off track and I apologize for that, but
no,
I do take advantage of those gentlemen who, like Dylan and Siegel and some of those guys, Bobby Morgenstein. I've reached out to them because I'm like, hey, I need help. I'm not doing a mitzvah thing, but I want to see your mitzvah catalog, because I have corporate clients that are saying, what can we do different? What's new? What's up? What's the next thing? And if I can take the mitzvah catalog and say, boom, I can put this at your corporate Christmas party, now I'm growing into more opportunity, because we do casino events, we do game show events. And it's like, what's that next thing? Well, like the bar gigs, right? So they come to their Christmas party and it's basically like a bar type of event where they got dartboards and we just bought the bubble hockey because Siegel was like, you got to get bubble hockey. Everyone loves bubble hockey. So I just picked it up yesterday. But again, it's looking at maybe not what I can do for a mitzvah, but what I can take away from the mitzvah and put it into this catalog or put it into my corporate. So it really does allow you to expand by taking other people's visions and creating a new vision with with what they have. So that was a good opportunity for us.
Yeah, and I think that feathers really well with a few podcasts ago, interviewed Joe Bunn, and we were talking about the idea of when you are starting to present in the industry, or so when you start to have a YouTube channel or a podcast, or you find your ways to start connecting with people at a higher level, you find that opportunity to gather resources that you otherwise may not have found.
Right.
And I think what you're describing is a nice callback to that, because you're saying, because of the relationship I have with Bobby and Mike and these guys over here, I'm able to have these conversations about like, hey, like, cause it's reciprocal, like, hey, I'm going to give you value, you give me value. And I think it's really powerful and hopefully encouraging to listeners that if you're only consuming, if you're only sitting and consuming content, and I think when you're at the beginning of a career or beginning of a journey, that's fine. But at some point you should give back content. You should provide help for other people, because that help for other people not only helps people, but it also opens doors. It's cool.
Yeah, and it allows those people who you are getting things from, or you're getting information from, it allows them to be more open, because they know that you're being open back and that you're giving back as well. And I think that is important, as you're not just building business relationships, in your market, but business relationships across the industry.
Yeah, and I think the fancy word for that is community. Like, we're building community across the industry by just being open and not gatekeeping information. Yeah. And hopefully we're trying to do that here on this podcast too. I want to give away a lot of information so that you can be successful. And that's a good segue back, because you're talking about finding the opportunities from the Mitzvah catalog and bringing them back to Sioux Falls and doing things in other ways and being inspired and sharing information. You are like, and I touched this on the top of the podcast, you're a multifaceted guy. I think if I have a question about Show Express, I'm coming to you. If I got a question about lots of things, I'm coming to you. I mean, you're a wealth of information of a lot of different areas. And I encountered this myself when I was starting to scale. Is I was the guy who I could do pin spots myself, but then when you start asking someone to get on a 20-foot ladder to install pin spots, you're like, okay, what kind of insurance do we have? So talk to me about kind of what you guys have done internally at the company to not let that flame extinguish, to not let that creative flame extinguish, and how to scale that idea of one-off client-led creative events.
Man, where do I start? Truthfully, when it came to an event, I want to say probably 12 plus years ago, we had a client that reached out to us and said, hey, we are throwing a gala and we want to do uplights. I'm like, cool. They're like, yeah, we want to make sure that the colors match our theme. I'm like, oh, well, what's your theme? And they're like, it's a masquerade. So I started asking questions. And I think that's one of the most important things, is ask questions that will allow you for them to be more successful. And so I started asking more questions. Then I started doing my research, and I started watching Phantom of the Opera. I started watching anything that was very masquerade-ish. And I started watching the detail, the colors, the textures, all of that. So I kind of took it to a different level of not just thinking of it as a DJ company, but thinking of it as someone who can come in and create their vision. So more of the designer, the lighting designer. So a lot of our stuff was usually done with lighting. Now we're getting deep into fabrics. Video wall has been a game changer for us. We can create a lot of cool themes and a lot of cool things with video wall. But to kind of keep that, what you said, the flame, how do you keep that flame going? It really is just always trying to think outside of the box and asking your questions to yourself. How can I make this that much better? And we make our DJs do that as well. So our DJs, if we're doing a grand entrance, what's that one thing? You think of Randy Bartlett back in the day, the 1% solution, right? Like, everybody knows that was legendary. And if you could do one little thing to make it that much better, how much of a difference will that make? It's going to be more than 1%. You put that 1% in, you're going to get 110% result. And so when we sit down with a client, again, as a DJ and as an MC, when I sit down with my clients, I really ask them questions like, what is it that you want to create here? And they say, well, we want to do this, this, and this. And then I'll, again, ask them the question, why? Why do you want to do that? And that was a Bill Herman thing that I learned a long time ago from Entertainment Experience. And when you start asking the questions, when my mind starts turning, I'm like, okay, I'm basically like writing a book inside my head on the result that I can create from this one thing that they've come from, or that they've come up with. And there's a lot of times where I'll be sitting in a meeting with a corporate client, and we're starting to talk about their holiday party, and they're like, well, this is our theme. I'm like, okay, cool. So what do you expect? Like, well, how are the guests coming in? And as they're doing this, I'm almost like walking myself through the event. I do this with my weddings as well. I walk myself through the event, and I start asking my questions in my head and basically drawing out that picture, drawing out that painting. Uh, the the things that from some of the corporate event clients that I've talked to, as I'm asking them questions, I'm like, oh, but we could also do this, this, and this. And next thing you know, they're like, you can actually do that? Like, yeah. But what if we actually did this with it? And then we added that to it, or we did this. And again, it's not just in the corporate world. It's very common in, again, what I'm doing with my weddings, like the introductions. Oh my gosh, I'll have to send you some videos. I have some introductions that we've done, and it's because we created this huge design element in the room. We had an event where we built this huge chandelier out of chandeliers. There's about 15 chandeliers. We hooked them all up to dimmer packs, and the couple had sparklers, and we had we were going to do the smoke machine, or the ground fogger for their introduction, or I'm sorry, for their first dance. And I'm like, well, hold on a second. I have all this stuff here. Why don't we use that for the introduction? And so the introduction, like I programmed all of the chandeliers, movers, all this stuff. It was this huge production that we put together just for their introduction. And truthfully, when I watch this video, I get chills, because it really was incredible. And it's one of those that I will never forget. And I know that everybody in that room will never forget. So, the chandeliers, it was going to the beat of the music, and we had all these really cool things. We had the movers, and then all of a sudden the movers went to where they were going to come in. And we talked, I basically wrote this all out almost like in a timeline, where it was, okay, all the wedding party, they're going to come to the stage, and then they're going to make a wall on the stage. So once they're all introduced, they're gonna make this wall, and then the intro music's going to start. It's all timelined with the lighting sequence. And as soon as they were ready to be introduced, the wedding party just kind of opened up, and the wedding couple came out, and this big cloud of smoke basically like allowed them to walk out. They were walking on the clouds, and then the sparklers went off. I mean, it was seriously, I'm getting chills again just thinking of it, because it really was one of those things that I never expected, or they never expected that it was going to be so grandioso. But just the result was incredible. And that's why I always push myself, because if I think it's cool and they think it's cool, then it's now raising the bar of expectation and what we can do for the next one.
If I could take everything you just said, two words come to mind. Maybe three. Curiosity. You're curious. You ask questions.
Oh yeah.
Now I'm going to put down to two. You're passionate.
Yeah.
You're passionate. And it shows, because when you talk about what you did, when you talk to your client about what you want to do, you're speaking with such enthusiasm, and that is infectious, and that gets people excited, and it gets people to agree to what you want to do, and it gets them to pay for what you want to do. But you're curious and you care. I would, without diving way into it, this might be the bones of a solo cast that I'll record about how to do this. But like, you don't have these visions in your head until you have the vocabulary of what's possible, right? Like you just mentioned it. They've got a masquerade theme in your head. You're like, that could mean a lot of things. So you started putting visuals in your brain. You started feeding your brain with potential. When I was in music school, and we were, it's well known as a music student that the most important thing for you to learn is what your instrument could sound like. Mm-hmm. You have to have an idea, a North Star of what you want it to show up as. And when you're practicing and you record yourself, does it sound like this? No. Well, I got more work to do. I need to do these things. So you're like, I now have this visual of what theatrics might look like. Now I got to go to my tech and my operations and see how I can actually physically make this happen. So I think a great way to land the plane here is some people are like, I've said it multiple times now, when you're good at a lot of different things, if you had to replace yourself at your company, let's say you took a year off and you needed Jer Events to keep going, you'd have to replace yourself with more than one person,
Yeah, that's kind of the scary part of the hard part,
Yeah.
And that's a great point. I could go on and on, but I'll let people they understand where you're going with that.
Yeah.
But
And the point is that, like, if you are great at the visionary, the dreaming side, and you're not good at okay, how do I get the foggers and map out all of the, the pixel mapping for the walls? You need someone that can. If you're great at the tech and you're not good at dreaming, you need someone that can. And then there's some people like Jer who can kind of do both of those things. And when you can visually see it in your head and program it in your head, then that's awesome. But when you're listening and you're like, that's cool, but how do I? Sometimes it's a partnership, sometimes it's an employee, sometimes it's a staff member, sometimes it's a spouse. Like, heck, I'll take all of my designs to my wife and go, hey, can you fix this? Because I've got a good idea and I can't get it to look right when I get on Photoshop or whatever.
Yeah,
So,
David, you had a good point. How do you bring in the right people? How do you bring in people to kind of fill some of those gaps? And I can tell you, man, it's hard. And I'm not saying to fill my spot. I'm saying as a multi-op, if you're going to grow, you really have to keep an open mind. You have to make sure that you have the right person. And we got rid of 2 people this year that were basically bodies. It's like, well, what's that one thing that they can bring value to in the business? And we're like, there's nothing that we need from them. They're bodies. So the skill set is definitely something that you have to find. You have to make sure that they're a good fit for it, and that they are filling a gap in your company. And I think that's a really important rule of thumb, to make sure that there's a contribution of some sort to allow yourself or allow your business to keep progressing forward. Find that gap, find that person.
Boom. See a need, fill a need, baby.
Yeah.
Jeremy Brech, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. I feel like we could talk for hours. Tell everyone how they can find you online. How can they connect with you?
Man, I would love to tell you that I'm super active on all my social platforms, but I do not like social media. If they ever have questions, they can email me. I'd be happy to answer questions via email, jeremy@djjer.com. I am starting to get the shop time. It's funny that you brought up shop time. I am starting to get the old shop time videos back up and running again.
Yeah.
Constraint on time. You know how it goes, especially when you're a multi-op. Everybody who's watching this.
Yes.
But yeah, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. Just search for Sioux Falls DJ Jer, and I'm sure we'll pull up something.
Excellent. Jer, it's been a pleasure. For everyone out there that's listening, we got free resources at blueprintlearn.com/resources, and we'll see you on the next one.